What's the good word, y'all? DKB here. So, is CJ Uzomah a bust? That's our question for the day. So, let's break it down. There's a lot of facts and there's a lot of philosophical opinions that kind of go into this. So, here's some of the facts. Joe Douglas signed CJ Uzomah from the Bengals in the offseason for a 3-year, $24 million deal. Instantly, the assumption, and this always happens based on contract value and team need. With that, that was one of the highest prices for the tight ends over this offseason. And coming off of fact that we completely revamped our entire room, how porous our tight end unit has been for the entirety of the last decade, and the fact that we know that Mike LaFleur likes to operate two tight end pass sets, as well as it just makes it a little bit more difficult in terms of defending the run or defending the pass when you have two viable weapons. Now, we assumed he was going to be the de facto starter, and then we end up double dipping. We pick up Tyler Conklin. We know we end up drafting Jeremy Ruckert, and he's more of an eye to the future. But there was a certain level of production that we were going to assume we can see out of CJ Uzomah. And for people that were expecting maybe George Kittle, Travis Kelce type numbers, that was never going to be the case. He had career numbers with the Bengals in 2021, and then he had a very similar season in 2018 actually for them. So what we see out of the 2018 and 2021 season is essentially, I believe, peak CJ. Otherwise, he's hovering around 20 to 30 catches per season, somewhere around 220 and about 350 yards a season, maybe 2 to 3 touchdowns. So he's not a world beater. He's not a game record by any means, but we were looking for the skill set to be an easy, transferable situation that would have helped boosted our passing attack, and that's the fact that he's a master at yards after the catch. So he's not a guy you can necessarily manufacture a lot of touches for. He's not going to be useful in tight end screens per se. He's not going to be a guy that you go out and try to, use him as a big rusher on jet sweeps or anything crazy like that. So really, you're looking at two options. You find out ways to manufacture offense for him, which would be some hitches and pass routes. We've seen a very good example of this with the wide receivers when Corey Davis and Tyler Conklin, actually, I think it was, scored that one of the final touchdowns against the Steelers last week. So you can do things like that and kind of manipulate the defenses in order to just get the ball in his hands and let him work. But we were never going to see anything substantial. So the huge shocker, though, is how little of an impact he's actually had for this New York Jets offense. I mean, week 1, he played 24 snaps. He had no targets. He had the hamstring issue and ended up being inactive in week 2. And then he plays week 3, but he only gets 1 target. He makes that catch, and it only goes for 5 yards. So what is happening? When we take a look at his usage so far, he's essentially being used as a special teamer and a blocker. And a lot of that goes into injuries on the offense. When you take a look at Tyler Conklin versus CJ, Tyler Conklin is easily the best receiving threat in that tight end room. And so you don't want to necessarily take away from that by having Conklin block, which forces CJ Uzomah to have to make up for when we're rolling out Connor McDermott and we're rolling out Elijah Vera Tucker as, an emergency tackle option. So hopefully with the news that Dwayne Brown's been activated, he comes back, he plays, and he plays well. And maybe we roll out Elijah Vera Tucker, as I mentioned, to right tackle. This takes away the need as much, and we can actually end up seeing both him and Conklin run some of these routes. But I mean, ultimately at this point, he's ran essentially as a special teamer plus. It's very interesting to see so far because he's essentially filled in the Trayvon Wesco role, which if that was going to be the case, for comparison's sake, Trayvon Wesco, I would say, is the better blocker in pass and running situations. And to make matters worse and rub a little salt into the wound, in a Justin Fields ran operated offense where there's very minimal weapons and anybody can easily stand out if they have the skill set and things warranted based on how the game flows, Trayvon Wesco has one catch for 23 yards. So in any situation, he's been beaten out. Trayvon Wesco definitely would have been a much cheaper option for us to retain in playing the role that CJ Uzomah has currently captured. So the only plus that you can generally say is that CJ is if not one of the best verbal slash morale leaders in the Locker room. He tends to kind of have that feeling that he's a glue guy. When we see One Jets Drive content, when we hear about how some of the other players bring up his name, and then we know he has the playoff experience. So currently, he's definitely leaning towards bust for what the expectations of his performance were going to be. And I can't see him fulfilling all 3 years of his contract based on what his current role is. But maybe as the season progresses, as we get a little bit better in the injury department, as we see the offensive line start to gel a little bit more, and as Zach Wilson starts to understand some of his newly acquired targets better, and the game plan skew that way towards the tight end again, we can see CJ Uzomah break out a little bit. But at this point, Tyler Conklin is the clear number one. CJ Uzomah is essentially being used as a blocking specialist, which is a role Jeremy Rucker can very easily fill. And so it leaves CJ on the outside looking in, and you kind of get the feeling that he's going to need to find a way to produce within the offense, or he's a risk of definitely being cut. Unfortunately, it's probably going to have to be in the 2023 season if you feel strongly about getting him off the team, based on the way Joe Douglas generally structures his contracts when he offers 3 years. It's an easy out after 2. If they feel strongly and they have the conviction, they can get him out, but we will eat a pretty sizable amount in dead cap space that Joe Douglas has done a very great job of trying to reduce significantly. So either way, I mean, these are pretty much the facts. I'd be more curious what your guys' thoughts are in terms of his ability to rebound and show why he can at least be a very solid number 2 tight end on this offense. Or is he essentially going to be relegated to the Trayvon Wesco role, and we overpaid for a talent that we could have found in a number of other spaces? So let me know what your guys' thoughts are, and I will catch you again. Peace.